Hey folks, welcome to another Headspace and Timing weekly update. I know that I mentioned last week, if you watched my video, that I was actually going to be doing this at a different time this week, but it turns out that apparently Friday mornings is the best time that I have to be able to do this kind of thing. So in the absence of anybody else who requests something different, then obviously we'll just kind of stick to doing what we're doing. Every week I like to come to you and talk a little bit about some of the stuff that we had going on last week, maybe looking forward to some of the things we are going to be doing next week, and even looking at things in the future as far as different opportunities that we may have, especially if you're certain areas to come see me speak or to reach out and see what's going on. So as I mentioned, every week we like to try to talk about some of the stuff that we did the previous week, and so as you know, if you've been following for a while, the Headspace and Timing blog is located at veteranmentalhealth.com. You can go there and you can see a lot of the latest blogs, everything that we do, we release on this website and some of the other websites. But the couple of big things happened this week. The first thing I'll talk about here in a minute is we actually released our digital ebook on Kindle. So this is a collection of Headspace and Timing posts from 2016. This is actually going to be something I'm going to be trying to do every year. Then, of course, we had the podcast this week, 8 Things a Therapist Wants a Veteran to Know, and then the blog this week where I highlighted a pretty neat resource. So we'll take a look and we'll show you a little bit about what each of those are. So these are the posts on Headspace and Timing that we've been putting together. So the first thing I want to talk about is we released the episode 6 of the Headspace and Timing podcast, 8 Things That a Therapist Wants a Veteran to Know. Now, this is a 2-part series of the podcast to be able to talk about both sides of the coin, whether a veteran wants what a veteran wants a therapist to know, which is the one that we did last week, and then, of course, this week's 8 Things a Therapist Wants a Veteran to Know. I think this was really important to talk about, and on the podcast, we're going to be switching between some interviews and some content that I release directly to you. But this one is pretty critical to me because as a combat veteran, I understand that veterans have a certain stigma, really, or misconceptions about what therapy is and what therapy can be. Just as I know as a mental health professional that some of my colleagues have certain ideas, perhaps, that they're not as familiar with veterans. And so this 2-podcast series, it matches a 2 blog post series that I did last year. And it goes through and it talks about some of the things that a therapist wants a veteran to know. Stuff like, this isn't Freud on the couch. This isn't something where you're going to be in therapy for years and years and years. There's actually evidence behind the fact that we can get things done fairly quickly and get you on to being back to kind of stability. This stuff actually works. The fact is that clinical mental health counseling actually does work. A lot of the challenge in popular media and things like that is the fact that people think it doesn't work or they want to try alternative therapies, but typically these are individuals who may not really understand exactly what it's like to work with a clinical mental health counselor. Veterans, you're going to have to talk about what's bothering you. You're going to have to talk about the things that are kind of causing you some problems. It's not going to be as bad as you think. Every time that I talk to a veteran, they sit down and they say, you know what, talking about it actually helps. It doesn't. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. It's not all about pills and meds, and we like to focus on that. The fact is everybody thinks, well, I'm not going to go to a shrink because all they're going to do is dope me up. And that's one aspect of veteran mental health that doesn't have to be what you experience. Mental health professionals, we actually know what we're talking about. We went to school for this stuff. We studied this stuff. We continue to study this stuff. You go to a lawyer and you expect a lawyer to be an expert or to be knowledgeable in the areas of the law. And so clinical mental health professionals are also experts and knowledgeable in aspects of mental health, and especially those of us who are familiar with veterans, with veteran mental health. So just as you will go to a lawyer or a doctor expecting them to be able to solve a certain problem, and knowing that they have the credentials and the ability to do so, same thing with mental health professionals. The thing with psychology and mental health is a lot of people think that they have the answer, but to be honest, they really don't have the background. They don't have the clinical training. They don't have the understanding. A lot of people think, and I've even had this. Veterans will come in and say, "Hey, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. That I'll follow orders," kind of thing. And that's not really what therapy is like. It's not me telling you what to do. It's not me, ordering you, or writing a prescription of a way of thinking. It's really a matter of reflection. As I tell clients, all the stuff maybe that I know, or the information is out there. It's on the internet. You can look up depression. You can look up PTSD. You can look up moral injury, purpose and meaning, existentialism, needs fulfillment. Everything that I talk about in a session with the client, you can find that thing on the internet. I'm not an answering machine where you type something in and then I spit back out an answer. Instead, I'm much more like a mirror. I'll reflect what a client has, what a client says. I'll reflect it back to them and see if it sounds accurate. Sometimes it's on point, sometimes it's not. But a therapist is not somebody who's going to tell you what to do. They're going to help you figure out what you need to do on your own. And then the other thing is, if you and I don't click, let me help you find somebody who does. And this is a challenge for most veterans. We experience the fact that when we were active duty, it was that we had to see the person that we had to see, for example, and no other choices. We couldn't switch. And especially with my clients, this isn't about me. It's not about my ego. It's not about what I feel. It's not. If I'm taking things personally, then I'm not keeping it professional. And a veteran comes to see me as a professional, not as perhaps a friend. Now, you can grow to trust a professional just as you can trust someone who's a quality mechanic or a quality lawyer, anyone else who's skilled to help you solve whatever problem you're having. The challenge is a lot of people think that, since I didn't click with this one therapist, I'm not going to try ever again. So, and that's just a really brief overview. This is a short episode. I think it's about 25-30 minutes, so take some time out. Really, both of the episodes, episode 5 and episode 6, they're real quick. And so you can listen to them both within an hour and catch them both on the one after the other. And you don't have to listen in any particular order. So on this, in the veteranmentalhealth.com, right there on the front page, you'll see this is a link to last week's episode and then the blog itself. So if that's something you're interested in, take a look. Yesterday, we released a new blog post. We do release a podcast every Tuesday. We release a blog post every Thursday. And so Thursday's blog post is a little bit of a preview, actually, of a guest that I have coming up next week. So this is a short film by Nicholas Scroggins, and it's a film called Heart of the Bull. I actually linked to the full film. It's about 14 minutes, but this is a movie that's essentially, or literally, Nicholas is the son of a clinical mental health counselor who is also a veteran who works at the Department of Veterans Affairs. And you'll hear a little bit about Mark. All the names, these aren't the individuals, of course these are actors, but the names are accurate, is based on accurate in real life situations. But this is a real important look at about the toll or the impact that working with veterans has. It kind of came to me that anybody who steps in the ring with a veteran's pain would benefit from watching this film. Like I said, it's only about 13 minutes, and so it's not going to take very long, but it's very, very impactful. And it was important enough for me to write a little bit more about it. The other thing that I want to talk a little bit about is the fact that this past week we actually put out an ebook. So we do have an ebook that's available on Amazon. The ebook's called Headspace and Timing: Veteran Mental Health from a Combat Veteran Perspective. And so this is really an opportunity, rather than reading the blogs one by one or piecemeal. And over the next couple days, I'm actually going to be releasing each of the posts that are in the ebook one after the other, and that's really going to stretch probably through Sunday, as this airs originally on Friday. But this is a collection of 52 blog posts that were edited and developed into, originally it started out as a training or a group support tool. There is, in El Paso County, Colorado, there is an entire ward of veterans in the county jail. So if you consider, a lot of us don't even think about the county jail, but think about the county lockup and think about individuals that are in there. And there is an entire ward of veterans, of about, I think there's 72 veterans in this one ward. And towards the beginning of this year, a group of the veterans approached me and said, hey, do you have something that we can kind of read, at a group? It was something that was really based on like the Blue Book for AA, and how, if you're familiar with Alcoholics Anonymous, where there's a portion in each meeting where they read something from the Blue Book. So the veterans actually wanted something that they can read to each other, that they can talk, that they can discuss. And then they approached me and asked if I could actually reach out and kind of figure out some things, ways for them to be able to talk about some of this stuff. And that's sort of how this was born. It went over big with them, and I've handed it out a little bit. And so we decided to put it together and decided to open it up as an ebook. You can actually go to Amazon and look for Headspace and Timing: Veteran Mental Health. You can find my name. You'll be able to find it there. Right now it's only on Kindle. It's only released on Kindle. This isn't something that we're planning on putting out in a hardback edition. This is just a more convenient, sort of concise way that you can actually read it sort of on the go. And so these are all of the posts sort of in one place. So that's the kind of stuff that we have going on this week. I would like to now talk about the podcast that we have coming up next week. Every Friday I come and I want to talk about the episode that we're releasing on Tuesday. And this Tuesday we're going to be talking to my colleague, my friend, Mark Scroggins, and I actually have presented together as a community partner and a VA clinical mental health counselor, talking about collaborative treatment for the Veterans Courts here in Colorado. And so I've got immense amounts of respect for all of my colleagues at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Not just Mark, but a lot of his colleagues, Dr. O'Neill, Dr. Kidd, Mark Frejo, Dinah Dunn. And so a lot of the clinicians that I've interacted with at the Department of Veterans Affairs here in Colorado Springs. Mark and I were able to sit down a little while ago and talk about his experience. You see a young Mark Scroggins there. He's living the glory days of his youth, but Mark was a drill sergeant. He was a combat engineer, and then he got out of the military shortly before 9/11, I think, and then has been working as a mental health professional, licensed professional counselor, and master's addiction counselor. And so this is really a bookend to the Heart of the Bull, and so Mark will talk a little bit about that film in our discussion, and he's going to bring up some other things about what it's like going from a veteran to a mental health counselor like myself. So that's something was coming up this next week. The other thing I'd like to talk about, and this is something that I've had some discussions about over the last couple times, is the Objective Zero app. And so if this isn't something that you're aware of, I have the ability, the pleasure really, to be able to participate in an online training with the Objective Zero ambassadors. And so the concept of what this is this nonprofit is going to be developing this app, which is basically sort of a one-touch, being able to connect with other veterans in an attempt to reduce the impact of veteran suicide. And so I was brought on as an advisory board member, talking about veteran mental health and talking about some of the issues and concerns. Oh, look, there's my buddy Tony. Hey, Tony, you're online. You can come online and check us out. But the Objective Zero app is going to be a way for veterans to reach out and talk confidentially to other veterans, and then ultimately really to be connected to the type of support they need. And so take a look at the Objective Zero app. You can Google Objective Zero. They're on Facebook. They're pretty much everywhere. And they're doing some great things, and I'm proud to be working with them. The other thing I'd like to talk about, and this is something that some people have brought up, is there's a lot of talk about congressional action around veteran mental health. And this is a subject that actually had come up this week. If you hadn't heard it, and I think I first read about it in Task and Purpose, about how there is a combat veteran, and he is a combat veteran by all accounts. Representative Mask, who's from Florida, Mast, who's from Florida, is very dedicated, and he's a ardent supporter of veterans issues and veterans mental health. But Representative Mast had put forward a concept that calls an oath of exit, and so essentially it's an oath which says that veterans will commit not to commit suicide, not to die by suicide. And while it, on the face of it, it seems like it might be a good effort, but it's really kind of been controversial from the very beginning. And Stars and Stripes recently put out a very good article about how clinical mental health professionals think that this really isn't going to be something that's going to be helpful. If you look up this article, plans to institute military oath against suicide could backfire. There's been a lot of us talking about it all this week, not just us and the mental health professionals, but in the veteran community as well. And the challenge is that the oath of exit, and you see it right here, but the oath of exit is a no suicide contract, and they simply don't work. There's Dr. Craig Bryan out of Utah conducted an assessment here at Fort Carson, and in the use of suicide contracts, those individuals that use suicide contracts or sign no suicide contracts were more likely to commit suicide. Some of it is, in some of the discussion here, is how a veteran who says, okay, I know I signed this thing, but yet I still have these suicidal thoughts, and how do I deal with that? And that makes me embarrassed, and I can't really manage that, so I'm not going to tell anybody, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. So I'm actually going to start to try to bring about some different things that are going on in Congress. The Choice Act, the Veterans Choice was extended. That's something definitely that my agency, the Family Care Center, and our supportive nonprofit, the Colorado Veterans Health and Wellness Agency, both of them do support Veterans Choice. Veterans Choice for veteran mental health is very different than choice for other sort of, like optometry or dentistry or things like that. The Veterans Affairs system is overburdened. It is what it is, and the fact is that the need is so great, and there are community providers like ours that can come alongside and provide support. So I am going to be talking about some of that stuff as we go forward. And I'm going to be bringing you some updates on some legislation that's going to impact veteran mental health. So there you have it. I appreciate joining me. KK, look at that. I've got some of my old troops decided to join me this morning, and I appreciate that. And Carlos and I are colleagues currently. Carlos is the business manager for the Family Care Center, and then my buddy Art, who calls me old man, but I'm pretty sure he's older than I am. This is an interesting. I'm gonna call you out, Art. When I was a platoon sergeant in Afghanistan, 2009, 2010, there were only 2 of us in the entire platoon, I think me and Lieutenant Blake Howard had 65, 70 soldiers or something in our platoon, and only 2 of us had actually been in the military before 9/11. That's me and my good friend Art Federhoff. And that was because Art had been in and got out and then came back in because he's such a patriot, and he's got a heck of a hairstyle. So I appreciate the time. Thank you for watching this. If you have, please, if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts about veteran mental health, join me. Every week, Friday morning, I'm going to be doing a Facebook Live talking about some of this stuff that we've had going on this week and what we're going to be doing the week coming up. So I look forward to talking to you. Thank you for joining me, and have a well week.